Okay, so welcome again. And my first novel here, Search for Truth, is going to, like my mom was saying, it's going to be the start of a series. I'm actually working on the next one right now and hopefully have that out by the fall. Just kind of a synchronistic journey. The story of a guy who's a investigative reporter at a small town paper, basically trying to put himself in the right place at the right time without knowing it's the right place and the right time. So, and just everything that follows out from that. So the first section I am going to read from. Jason, who's my main character, just got offered a job in New York, and during a phone call out of the blue, just while he was sitting at home. So here we go. If there ever was a time for Jason and Christina to have a deep conversation about the root of their relationship, this was the time. Do you think I should have the chance to advance my dreams and bring into reality all the things I know are possible? Jason said with an edge in his voice, as if you were trying to test Christina. Well, of course you should have the chance. I can't believe you'd even ask me that, like you're asking if I want you to succeed. So you want to know if I think you deserve it? Of course you do. Jason, I love you. No matter what, I'm always here for you, Christina said in a very supportive and loving voice. So are you going to tell me who Marty is and what he wanted? He works with Democratic Republic magazine in New York and wanted to offer me a job, Jason said very anxiously. That's great and definitely something to go after, but why did he call all of a sudden? Why did we not have any warning something like this was coming? No clue. Marty called because they had been talking about the water park story around the newsroom and wanted to speak with the no-name reporter who broke the story. He said because I had special witness testimony and uncovered a conspiracy complete with payoffs and illegal workers, he wanted me to work for them. Apparently nobody anywhere was able to get the quality interviews that I did. Little old me, working for a cheap nothing paper, got a bigger scoop than the bigwigs with all their fancy equipment, foreign bureaus, research, and assumed best education money could buy. Jason outscooped the big boys, but then of course they dropped the story because their corporate overlords wouldn't let them spell out the truth. Jason and Christina walked over to sit at the table. Both of them were pretty long-winded when they were passionate about something. So what would you like to do? Christina asked Jason, genuinely wanting to know the answer. I want to take it a course. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. They offered me lots of money, a corner office, creative and editorial autonomy, basically everything a reporter dreams of. And I can do any stories I want, Jason said excitedly. The only thing is they want me to move to New York and work out of the main office. Christina was having a hard time finding the words to accurately portray what she wanted to say. New York, huh? That's a long way from here. You know I'm locked into working for Shane Corps, right? You might say I'm working my way up in the field that is my passion. If I want to be a forensic scientist, I have to pay my dues, and the company I work for is a way to do that. I know you can't leave. In fact, you shouldn't for all the reasons you just stated. That's what makes this decision so difficult. On the one hand, I could take a job that is a surefire gateway into the halls of power. I'll be able to uncover truths that hold us as a society back. On the other hand, I could stay with the only woman I've ever truly loved and continue to work for a small paper, discovering truth in whatever way I could, Jason said as if he just unloaded something that weighed on his mind for years, which really had only been a couple minutes since he hung up the phone. Christina sat in her chair and leaned back. Then she got up for a glass of water as she became extremely parched all of a sudden. I think you have to go after your dream. I'd never forgive myself if you stayed, Christina said as tears welled up in her eyes. She filled a glass with water from the sink and took a big gulp before she spoke again. You're also the only man I've ever truly loved. You've taught me so much in the short time we've been together. You supported me through all my trials and tribulations, and the fact you were completely and utterly behind me when I took the Shane Corps job showed you honestly care what happens to me in my life. Christina took another gulp of water before setting her cup by the sink and sitting back down. The sun was starting to pour in the window now, which was one of the things she and Jason always loved about their place. Especially now they could use all the warming energy they could get. I love you, Christina. I love the fact you're a truth seeker just like me, but from a different angle. I love that you go after what's swept under the rug because you genuinely care, and truly want to make the world a better place for all its present and future inhabitants, Jason said with a glow in his eyes, thinking about the beautiful woman sitting in front of him. I know you do, which is why you have to take the job. Let me prove the love that has kept us together. We both care about what happens to the planet. Our love for each other is designed and built on the idea that we help each other grow and achieve much more in the furtherance of collective evolution than we ever could by ourselves. So that's the first section. The next section I picked out is basically Jason's first day at work in New York, and he's in his first morning meeting with his new boss, Marty. Okay. So, if Jason was ever interested in taking down the powerful, the people who beat the system or in some cases built the system so they could beat it, then now was the time. Was he ready to do it instead of endlessly dreaming about it? Could he take the step that would advance him towards what he wanted to accomplish, big picture? You ever heard of the people in Congress that do insider trading, said Marty, trying to test Jason's knowledge, but also testing the waters for the story he was going to pitch? Yeah, I've heard of them. It's pretty much called all of Congress. Let's not forget the Senate, too. Judges, lawyers, everyone in Washington seems to work by their own set of rules, Jason said as he felt his energy grow. That's for sure. They all do stuff that would send me or you to jail in a heartbeat. If the person with all the gold writes down the rules, then the person who makes the gold available is the one who creates the rules, said Marty, feeling like he was getting on one of his soapboxes. What's your point? Jason said, very eager to see what Marty was building to. I got wind of a new scam that some Congress people are pulling. They take information that gets disseminated and make as much money off it as they can. That doesn't sound new to me. They do that all the time, probably every day of the week. Right. But the difference this time is what they're doing with the information. Okay, so what are they doing with it? They're taking it and making a lot of money off of it, of course. Then when no more can be squeezed out without people catching wind, they start these shell companies. Well, not really shell companies in the usual sense of being a front for the CIA or something. No, this shell company is just a means of creating information. That way they get the inside information from the inside, cranking it out like their own personal ATM. Jason sat there for a minute just trying to absorb before he spoke. That's crazy, but not totally unexpected. Greed knows no boundaries. So is this something they all do, or is this leading towards one individual you might have the opportunity to go after because you figured out their weak spot? This is just stuff I've noticed for a while. After the market crash and all the crazy radicals made their way into the Capitol, the gloves are off. What do you mean the gloves are off? I mean, the rule book is being thrown out the window and new plans are being explored. Jason took a deep breath as Marty continued. I've hit up some of my best sources, and as expected, this is something that's always happened. Except now, corrupt politicians want to do things out in the open because their egos have grown so big. To do it on the grand scale they want, they have to expand their reach. But with everybody having a camera in their pocket and the internet being everywhere, they had to rephrase it. So instead of calling it insider information, they call it tips they found because they did their homework. Instead of stealing information, they are gaining ground on their enemy that wants the entire system to fall. Instead of stealing what would land any person in federal prison for many years, they say they're only being smart about where the world is going and don't want the money to fall into the wrong hands. So it's a classic example of doublespeak, them saying one thing but doing another. Jason looked up at Marty and saw he was nodding in agreement. They really are making this world a little more like 1984 every day, huh? Certainly seems like it, Marty said with fright about where the world was headed, but excitement at the same time that the young, intelligent, and passionate young man sitting across from him was getting what he was throwing down. So I guess I'll ask again, what do you want me to do with this? I want to see what you can dig up. Now is the time to test your journalistic skills and see what you can discover. I know you're new to the city and it could take a while to build up trustworthy contacts, but I want to see what you can do. That water park story was one thing. But we're talking about corruption on a global scale that will bleed this planet dry. I'm up for that. Sounds like quite the challenge. I've been waiting my whole life for an opportunity like this to take somebody down that deserved it, so thank you. I will not let you down. I know you won't, because that's the kind of person you are. Just keep me updated on what you find and when you think you have material to print. We'll give you as much time as you need, but we also want to make sure this isn't going on forever without you finding anything. Just keep me in the loop. I will, Marty, thanks. And thank you for everything. The limo from the airport, the place to live, which is amazing and better than I ever imagined, and this job. This is what I've dreamed of since I was little. So again, thank you. So the next section I'd like to read from, Jason and his new partner Bryan at the magazine have traced insider trading to an anti-immigrant rally, and they are now interviewing their not their first person, but somebody that's there. "Hey, I'm Jason, and I'm here reporting so more people hear about the cause and what they can do about it. I was wondering if you'd like to make any comments," Jason said to the clean-cut man behind him who was wearing a suit despite dirty tennis shoes. Yeah, I'm here because immigration has gotten out of control. This place will let anybody in and say, hey, come here and live, take our benefits, use our schools and hospitals, and drive on our roads, but don't pay any taxes or vote in our elections or even have decent American traditions. They don't know what it's like to make a real and honest living. They don't know what a hard day of work is like, said the man, aching to express himself. Bryan looked at Jason like, here we go. He knew Jason would go off on this guy by how strong his opinions were when they talked amongst themselves in the office and the car. He was worried Jason would mess the whole thing up and then have to go back to square one. This was Jason's first real test as a reporter, to see if he could handle people in a professional manner to get at the heart of an issue, and the real reason he would even think of coming to a rally like this in the first place. Is there a way we could fix this problem, something we could do to teach them the American way of life? Jason said, leading the man on. He felt that the secret to taking right-wingers down in verbal combat was just letting them talk. They would eventually say something to disprove the point they just made, basically the conversational version of set it and forget it. We could build a wall with gun turrets and a moat along the whole length of the border. We could plant landmines, but none of that would work. They would just find some other way in. We have to stop them. We have to throw out politicians that don't want to push any meaningful security measures through. They're the lousy pinko commies that want to let anybody in with no rules and let it be a free-for-all. You think crime is bad now? Just wait and see what happens if we keep sitting on our hands. See what happens if we keep having politicians say they want to stop illegal immigration, but then turn around and do nothing. They are the real problem. They are the people we need to get rid of. Why do Congress people say illegals are bad, then when they have a chance to do something about it, they don't? What are they hiding, and why and where are they hiding it? Jason began to think it was mighty interesting somebody on the complete opposite end of the political spectrum as him could probably agree with him a lot more than he thought. It's amazing what can be seen when you get to the root of what's wrong. This guy wants to take a politician down because he isn't tough on immigration when he says he will be. Jason wants to take the guy down because he supports illegal immigration when it keeps his fields and factories filled with cheap labor and makes them more money. Not to mention insider trade with the information of where people are and the best way to hide them and put them to work. They might come from two different places and might think of the perfect world as two different locations, but on this they might come together. Was this the key to the whole thing? Could people come together when they see their end goals are basically the same by virtue of being human? Could they see that what they want is the same and what they think they want is fogged over their critical thinking skills? Well, thank you for your thoughts, sir. And I agree something has to be done about senators and congressmen who say one thing and do another. It's poisoning the whole political landscape, but the more people like you that ask questions and get to the root of what nobody wants to talk about, the better off we'll all be. See you in there, said Jason as he waved at the guy who waved back and then disappeared into the building. So, the last section I have picked out is Jason and Bryan had met up with Jason's old friend Aaron that he knew from school, who was speaking truth at the rally, and now they're all having drinks at the bar afterwards. So here's the last one. Sorry. Okay. I think this lady is keeping me here for some reason, or this waitress is keeping me here for some reason. I don't know why, I just feel like something's going on. Remember me talking about that congressman at the rally and how he told me about that guy he turned down? Said Aaron, knowing how vague it sounded, so he tried to clear himself up immediately. Just as Aaron was about to open his mouth, a hand tapped him on the shoulder, making him jump out of his pants like something out of a Dr. Seuss story. Fancy seeing you here, Aaron. This isn't your usual watering hole. Mind if I sit? Asked the confident man in a dark suit as he sat down like he owned the place, making all the guys uncomfortable but intrigued at the same time. I know you from somewhere, don't I? And how would you know this isn't my usual place for a drink? Asked Aaron, wondering if the guy had been following him or was just a jerk. Come on, man, you can't be that drunk already, said the man as he looked right at Jason with an evil eye that inferred this chance meeting was no chance. I know who you are now. You're that guy at the rally that was going to speak after me. You're that congressman, Mark Rydell, said Aaron as he cautiously put out his hand to see if the congressman would shake it. Yes, I am, and sorry you got thrown out. I told them they shouldn't have done that. You never know who's going to run to for help. the congressman said as he continued to glare at Jason like he was going to choke him with the Jedi mind meld. Yeah, what was that about? I thought you and I were on the same page. We both want to make change, or is it something else? Do you have other interests? Aaron said to Rydell, yearning for a path to the truth. While it is true that we should stop all illegals from coming here, we are a country of laws and we have to abide by them or we're left with chaos. We can't just go around doing and saying whatever we want. It could hurt somebody and make them look bad to the people they work for. I couldn't imagine what that feels like, said Rydell, whose face was getting red with the anger building inside him towards Jason. What's your point, man? And why are you staring at Jason like you want to eye screw him to death? Said Aaron, trying to regain his confidence and manhood that floated away when Rydell sat down at their table. My point is that I don't like interrupting my busy schedule to talk to little pissants like you about what they should and shouldn't be doing. I have so much more important stuff to deal with than sit here and talk to you in this pit. Stop poking a hornet's nest. You never know what you'll find. You'll never discover what you're looking for because we're so much bigger than you and have all the power and influence. What do you have? Some cheap beer and whiskey? Please, said Rydell, who was getting angrier the longer he sat at the table. So you were the one that had me thrown out? You want to beat me up right here? You tough enough to get into an old-fashioned bar fight? Don't come in here and threaten me. Nobody threatens me. I'd love to knock you down a peg, take you off that high horse you're sitting on, said Aaron as his own anger was building. You think I've made it this far in the game without being able to handle someone like you? Said Rydell as his anger disappeared and the unyielding coolness he walked in with returned. All I'm saying is watch your back. Whenever you're walking down the street and feel a breeze, think about me nipping at your heels. Think about me knocking you down a few pegs from the lowly place you're already at. I should actually thank you for working hard and making me so much money. All my friends and I have had so many exotic vacations and truckloads of cash bestowed upon us because people like you just have to provide for your families. You'll put up with whatever crap pay or working conditions we put you through. So just keep working, worker bee. You can't do anything. You can't risk your own survival to enter this fight. You'll lose and you know it. Come at us if you want, but only if you feel like leaving this earth. Just remember, there's a lot easier ways to kill yourself. Rydell didn't take his eyes off Jason the whole time he was sitting there, and after he felt he made his point, he got up and walked away. See y'all, and don't forget to vote November. So, I'd like to open up. Are there any questions, comments, anything? I didn't want to read too much into the book because I didn't want to give away too much of the story. I feel like it's a story that has basically one that might be, not completely probable, but it's definitely possible. I've always liked science fiction stories and things that were technically true but probably wouldn't happen, but it makes your mind travel to the point where, you start thinking of things like that. So, yes.
Well, I've tried to have serious conversations in places other than Humboldt State University about important matters like the level of income inequality that the United States is surpassing 1929 actually, and our international policy toward the poor of the third world ever since Bretton Woods, I suppose 1945, when we claimed that protectionism was something that we were going to try to avoid in times of struggle. Yet at the same time, I feel like in reality, we are not genuinely attempting to help anyone, but I don't feel like that about myself and about people like us. But it feels like the system is very violent, predatory, you know, and pretty much from the top to the bottom. And there are very few people you can have conversations about this type of thing with, but I feel like the legitimate forms of political expression have the doors pretty much closed for that reporter and people like us who would really do strongly want things to change, but people are afraid to talk about it. It can cost you your job and your career, even in Humboldt County, in that little piss poor job, and it can cost you quite a lot. I feel like, on the same time, though, that we need to put that fear aside and risk our career and our reputation to put those things out there.
Critical mass.
And but so few people. I don't know. I guess there are a lot of people challenging the way that things are going, but I see them challenging it more in a libertarian type of a way, rather than a feeding and dealing substantively with the social and economic issues that we face.
Sure.
How do you? I mean, how do you feel about the direction that our country is going right now? And are you optimistic about?
I'm always optimistic because that's just who I am. I'm an optimist no matter how bad things seem, because what am I going to do, give up? Because then I might as well not do anything if I'm just going to give up and, feel like I have no effort. So no matter how dark stuff gets, and I, get in kind of dark places just like anybody sometimes, but, we have to, or we might as well just give up. But what I was thinking of is you started out with 1929, and it's interesting because they started using the term Hoovervilles again, which is what they used back then, which I thought was kind of interesting. But it also made me think of basically Milton Friedman and the Chicago School of Economics, which is basically started after the New Deal, and everybody's how they didn't like it and how they didn't want it, and it built on super free market. The only thing the government should ever be there for is basically military and security, and that's it. They could never fully get that to go all across the board here, so that's when they started invading handfuls of Latin American countries and places around the world to kind of test this out. And then it never really worked out in actuality, and they could never fully put it through here. So just after years, they've been slowly chipping away at what's been there, slowly putting in more conservative, more more right-wing judges, lawyers, at every level, and slowly chipping away at these laws that they couldn't just. I mean, that section of the 14th Amendment that was yeah, the equal protection. It's sad that that's happened, but at the same time, I feel optimistic, really, because I know that when real change is afoot and real change is possible, the people that have been entrenched for years will get really upset when they feel like their power is being threatened. And so I feel optimistic, because if they are getting this upset and this much crazy stuff is happening, then they must actually feel threatened, and that gives me hope.
You mentioned, which I so much agree with, that if both sides of the extremes got together and had a conversation, they would typically find that they have a lot more in common than they have apart. Yeah. That it's just that their approach to reaching that outcome or those ends seem to be different. One, of course, and they all both, I think, across the entire spectrum, they're important and valuable values in all of that, But I guess it just seems so negative, and I feel like it really isn't getting any better. We just get progressively worse. More guns in the system, more people buying ammunition like crazy, invading more countries, attacking everything, and I feel like it's nothing more than just a new form of colonialism and a way to profit. Well, I'm going to let it go at that, but thank you for your reading.
Oh yeah, no, it's true. I mean, everything's slowly getting privatized. A lot of people, so that's what some people had with the problem with President Richmond at HSU, is that when he came in 10 years ago, he started privatizing everything. And that could be an example of what's going on all around the country with universities and every possible thing being privatized. I mean, I'm not a complete socialist and I'm not a complete capitalist. I would probably find myself somewhere in the middle. And I've had this conversation with people that if you took capitalism, like just straight capitalism, but gave it rules that people had to actually stick to, that were actually set in stone, would it even be capitalism anymore? Probably not. But I think there's just basically some industries and some things that shouldn't be made a profit off of, and should never be. But, you know, at the same time, I think, you know, the fact that somebody can start a business and kind of push, you know, bring up their idea and the supposed American dream that's supposed to be there, I think is a good thing, you know. And I think opportunities could get bigger for, you know, some people, of course, but, you know, that will hopefully be worked out in time, so. Anybody else? I think it's interesting that, actually, should I say, I'm not quite surprised that our nation's first black president got this much ridicule over everything, and not that each president hasn't had the opposing party ridicule them, because they have, but and personal opinion, of course, but I don't feel it's ever gotten to this level yet. But I think the real test will be the, you know, what comes after. But I feel like, you know, I can have nothing but hope. I can say that I probably don't want another Clinton in office. You know, I don't think that's almost like the Democratic version of, you know, the Bush dynasty, in a way. So I can't really say I like that, but at the same time, you know, as, you know, stuff is getting more gridlocked. It's getting more kind of crunched together, and the more we can kind of, you know, unweave that basically by starting the conversation where we all agree, you know, coming together where we can all agree, because I feel like we can on about 90% of stuff, but there's this 10% of issues that keep us from really coming together, and we say, hey, well, we can't agree on this 10%, so we shouldn't come over to this whole big section over here. And you know, I think that needs to be flipped around. I don't know how you could do that on a grand scale, but, you know, nothing. Yes?
Good point, Brian. I was thinking this is a nice segue into think globally, act locally.
Yes.
And maybe that's a way to bridge a lot of areas. There are going to be conservatives, there are going to be radicals, there are going to be middle of the road people.
Sure.
But that's something that we can all get behind. And I find these days there are more things that we all are starting to agree on.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe that's how we could, you know, focus a conversation that's ongoing with each other.
Exactly, because once we get used to talking to each other like civilized human beings, maybe we could get to the root of. So I'm, you know, I would definitely consider myself pretty liberal, but I've had some pretty archly conservative people read some of my writings and actually get what I'm trying to say, and that gives me hope, because, you know, they see that I'm just trying to, you know, cut through the fog. I'm trying to say, hey, you know, we all want to provide for our families. We all want a better world for our kids. And everybody knows that. Everybody feels that. But it's like, oh, because you voted for so-and-so, I can't even talk to you now. I don't even want to look at you. And that's, to me, that's really the root of the problem. But, you know, the fact that people say, oh, well, we can't talk about religion and politics. I'm not getting into the religion side of things, but I think that's the problem right there, is because people are so afraid to talk about this stuff. So yes, I think, you know, the more we can see ourselves as kind of a microcosm of the macrocosm, as far as, you know, a small section out of the global world community, then, you know, we'll feel a lot more interconnected. So, yes?
Does she come back in to the store?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. Because
simple. I just have a simple question.
I can say that I'm going to say they eventually do, but only because they've been completely open and honest with who they are and what they're about and what they're going after. If they didn't do that, their paths would have never crossed back up, because basically when they split apart, they knew that you know, if they were really meant to be together, they would come back together. And if they came back together this time, it was because their dreams and their passions drove them to each other. So if they actually made it back together, then, you know, there wouldn't really be much tearing them apart at that point, as far as, you know.
That sounds like a riddle.
A little bit, a little bit. My editing can be a little difficult sometimes. My rough drafts can be a little thick when I write them. But, yeah.
Well, as a mom, when that did happen, I went, yippee! I did. Okay. Naughty, naughty.
But I get what you're saying as far as, because I was interested too, whether she would come back in the story. And the first part was, you could feel the heartbreak in it. It was heartbreaking. And it's just like the winds of the world and was tearing them apart. And it was because they each had to follow their own passions. Yeah. Even though each other were their own passions as well. I mean, it goes into all those themes of destiny and all those sort of things. And sort of what you were saying, by following their hearts, we'll tear them apart. But then if they get back together, it's going to be that much truer, that much stronger. And that much, real,
healthier,
and healthier meant for each other, right? It's going to be grander.
Oh, definitely.
It's a great setup for that theme.
I go more into detail of that, of course, in more of the chapters. I have a little debate basically over, more deeply into love and